Hey, story fans, it's your old pal, the Writing Ref. I don't hate, I just officiate your favorite TV shows. Episode 23, or rather, Chapter 23 of The Mandalorian is too good to penalize yet, even though there were a few places that I might consider at the end of the season. Spoilers ahead. For example, are you gone if you didn't want spoilers? Okay. Mandalore is cut off from communications by a huge storm, which we're shown this over and over again.
We'll lose comms shortly.
Well, if Moff Gideon is having his Shadow Council while still on Mandalore, which we're led to believe, how is he having those communications? It might lead into where the other spy is, but we'll get into that in another video. For now, an episode like this, which is really good, can show us where fan reactions have earned a few penalties. That's why this week's episode is on the top 10 penalties of Star Wars fans for these streaming TV shows.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Rebellion tell me to protect them. What if they get sick?
While Danny kind of forgot about the Iron Fleet and Euron's forces.
That I vow to make it my life's work to help others avoid such needless loss.
Fan penalty number 10. Star Wars fan is complaining about filler. Ah yes, filler, or side quests. Season 3 has had its share. You'd think Star Wars fans would have learned, especially with the TV shows, not to complain so much about it. But we still do. Anybody remember Miggs Mayfield? We thought Bill Burr was a one-off cameo to give us a space Boston accent. But he came back with a vengeance. We'll talk about that in a minute. Something we all have to keep in mind is that The Mandalorian, Ahsoka, all these shows, they're really the story of how the Empire persisted, how evil festered and rose again. So even though the show is called The Mandalorian, we're going to have to take side stories to tell that story. And don't worry, we're going to find out about what the Mind Flayer's for, what Kane is really up to. And maybe Dr. Pershing will come back with a vengeance, just like Miggs.
To the Empire.
Fan penalty number 9.
Thank you.
Star Wars fan is complaining about cameo appearances. In the pilot episode of The Mandalorian, Horatio Sands of Saturday Night Live fame played a bounty. He was goofy and new, and not something we've seen in Star Wars before, but I don't recall anyone ever complaining about him. But recently we got a cameo from Jack Black and Lizzo, and I wonder if it was so much the cameo or the character. Is probably a valid criticism to question the sudden shift in tone of the show, or the direction it was going. In fact, I did so in another video. But the cameos itself didn't deserve hate. Therefore, anyone who criticizes only the actor's appearance in the show, and not the reasons why they found it jarring according to the story or characters, gets a penalty. Fan penalty number 9. Star Wars fan is complaining about a black villain. Mandalorian fans and critics have been complaining about the absence of Big Bad Gideon in the 3rd season of the show. The last time we saw Gideon in season 2 was in the final episode, and then it took till the penultimate episode for him to appear in season 3. But this is Gideon's tradition. He didn't appear till the penultimate episode of season 1, until episode 6 of season 2. Now, on the one hand, they're following a formula for his appearance. I think that's why they thought they could shove Cad Bane into the end of the Book of Boba Fett. But unlike Gideon, Cad Bane's presence wasn't really felt throughout the entire show. His underlings weave a complex web that lead beyond him into Thrawn, Snoke, the First Order, and even how somehow Palpatine returned. One thing Star Wars has never lacked was a good villain.
Sir, I'm afraid the pirates have run into trouble on Navarro.
In your last report, didn't you suggest that the New Republic would not be sending support?
It wasn't the New Republic. Magistrate Karga was...
Fan penalty number 7. Star Wars fans feels entitled that their expectations did not come true. Fan entitlement and expectations are difficult to manage. By the time the sequels rolled around, they made a story which omitted some of the things storytellers thought fans hated about the prequels, but in doing so, created a story with even more problems. We as fans need to learn to keep our expectations in check so that new things can be tried. One show that was able to try completely new things was Andor, and it serves as a shining example of what can be accomplished when expectations are taken out of the equation.
Making up our sentences as we go along. We know that no one outside here knows what's happening. Now we know that when there is one way out, right?
I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. So what do I sacrifice? Everything!
What if we could have moments like those with Luke Skywalker or Ahsoka? Technology's available to do it. It's only going to get better. But in order for it to happen, we need to leave our expectations at the door at what they do with our beloved characters. Are we willing to have some characters pass the torch on to other ones? And are we willing to give up some of the ones we love in meaningful goodbyes? We might be finding out tomorrow on The Mandalorian. Fan penalty number 6.
Visionary.
Star
He
Wars
was cut
fan
short
was
in his
complaining
prime
about
by the
politics
Jedi
in Star Wars.
Politics.
Believe it or not, politics has always been in Star Wars, from the very beginning. It was just edited really well. But meta jokes like that one from Bo-Katan leave me concerned, because it means that storytellers of Star Wars still think fans will get bored with too much politics.
Are you kidding me? Fans will get bored. I did a whole video on it, like 15 years ago. Politics in Star Wars sucks.
Mr. Plinkett from Red Letter Media, what are you doing here? Get on my video!
Well, my pizza rolls were still in the oven, and I heard some idiot talking about politics in Star Wars was important.
Well, they are important. Just look at The Force Awakens. Nobody understood that there was actually a republic unless they read the opening crawl really carefully. And then when it all got blown up, no one understood the significance of it. You have to have politics to link those things.
Yeah, but nobody cares about Moan What's-Her-Face and whatever she's up to with her worms in her drinks and...
Oh, they'll care when Thrawn shows up and takes advantage of the political situation to become the threat.
Who the hell is Thrawn? That blue guy?
Hey, I think I smell pizza rolls burning.
Oh, gotta go. Good luck with your whatever.
What shall I forge for the foundling Grogu?
Fan penalty number 5. Star Wars fan is complaining that the title character is not in his own show enough. I've seen this complaint a lot this season of The Mandalorian, and it really comes from the Book of Boba Fett. But we'll talk about that in a minute. A lot of Star Wars shows, most of them, have a title character, but then a lot of other stories going on. Interesting stories, like Mon Mothma's. Now with The Mandalorian, you can argue about pacing, or maybe editing. But he's been present in his show. Or is it really his show? It is about the Mandalorians in general. Bo-Katan is a Mandalorian. The Foundlings are Mandalorians. Grogu is ending up being the Mandalorian. This is a story of a culture. And unlike in the Book of Boba Fett, where 2 episodes of The Mandalorian got inserted into a show, which was very obvious, The Mandalorian complaints are not as warranted. And from the look of the Ahsoka trailer, I bet there's entire arcs in episodes, or maybe even entire episodes, where it's only Sabine or even Hera, and no Ahsoka at all. We'll have to see, but we shouldn't let it bother us, because it's about all these characters. Fan penalty number 4. Star Wars fan is complaining about a plot point before it ever has a chance to be resolved. Something we all should be aware of by now with these streaming shows, but we don't seem to be, is that they are in fact television shows, and some plot points are going to take a minute to develop, especially when we can't stream them and have to watch week to week. We wondered why Boba Fett was getting a Rancor, and when was he going to write it? The answer was, of course, in the finale. We wondered what the hell just happened when the Grand Inquisitor got stabbed. He's not supposed to be dead. The purist of continuity said, well, he wasn't. He came back to taunt her a second time. And of course, this season in The Mandalorian, with IG-88, IG-11, we complained that it would cheapen his death to bring him back. And we would have been right. Except we didn't have the patience to wait and see that he was going to be Grogu's fun little mech.
Like a panther. Yes.
Fan penalty number 3. Star Wars fan is whining about poor special effects and small battle size. The special effects in any franchise are very often up to scrutiny, and some special effects will not always be as good as some other ones. But what I think we do far too often is let it ruin the experience for us, when really, these are just television shows, as I said before, and even though their budget is smaller, some of the things they do are absolutely amazing. We gotta keep that in mind for when we get our battles. The most recent episode of The Mandalorian, I saw complaints about why didn't they retreat. Well, there's a big monster in their way behind them, and Bo-Katan's trying to get them to a safer position, but the further they went in, the more they realized there was no safe position to secure. So they have to write ways for things like this to make sense. And that's why we're getting a movie instead of another season of a television show for the Star Wars Avengers, if you will. Fan penalty number 2. Star Wars fan is complaining that Star Wars is too
Tell
woke.
me where the Jedi is, or this man and his family die!
I'm gonna get serious for a minute, and I'm a small channel, so I can afford to do that. Did that scene offend you? If it did, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to everyone out there who is willing to listen about how woke doesn't need to be a word to divide us. Doesn't need to be a word for one side or the other. It just means recognizing that you have advantages that others don't, and that you might be an advocate for social justice. Social justice is different from social vengeance. The movie being depicted is an example of social vengeance. Rather than showing equality between men and women, for example, it shows the inverse equality. It attempts to have male characters experience what female characters have been experiencing in movies for so long. A sort of, how do you like it type attitude. So whenever you come at someone with anger and vengeance, their likelihood of listening to you decreases a whole lot. And a lot of movies, if they aren't outright social vengeance like this one, might get a little preachy. But I have yet to see a Star Wars movie be preachy. Star Wars has always been woke and pushed forth diversity from the very beginning. And 99.9% of complaints that I see against it in the woke genre earn themselves a penalty, because they're already threatened and don't differentiate between social justice, diversity, and social vengeance. The scenes I'm showing you here are just characters being characters. They have no agenda except for what's on their plate and their story. And I'm glad that so many of them are so badass. Fan penalty number 1. Star Wars quote-unquote fan was harassing cast and crew. Now, you may not agree with me about social justice versus social vengeance, but no one, and I mean no one, should be harassing Star Wars cast and crew. It's become well known how psychologically damaging it was to Jake Lloyd and Ahmad Best just to be bullied by fans. And I'm so glad that Ahmad Best was able to come back, and I hope Jar Jar comes back too, not just his Jedi character. Fans can fight it all they want, but those people, they're trying to do something for you. And if you are hateful towards them, then the penalty is you don't get to call yourself a Star Wars fan. And that's my top 10 penalties against Star Wars fans list. Did you agree with my list or the order? Let me know in the comments. Throw the red flag. My list, let me know in the comments or throw the red flag and we'll address it next video. If you like this video or some of my other ones, subscribe and like to get more content. We're just getting started, but I need you Star Wars fans out there to help me out. Until next time, this has been The Writing Rest.